Hello, my dear friends, and welcome to our virtual celebration for the week of November 21st, 2021. I'm so happy that you've joined us. We are continuing this month's theme, which is finding spiritual fulfillment in the practice of gratefulness and generosity. So please relax, enjoy yourself, and let's do this thing.
Knowledge from a book, pictures that we took, the wisdom from my favorite climbing tree, strings on my guitar, quarters in my mason jar, a smile from a stranger on the street. I will give it all back, all that I receive, 'cause nothing in this whole wide world belongs to me. My body, hair and eyes, this great blue sky, the gift of singing loud, playing proud. I'll take everything I learned, and even everything I earned. I'll take everything this life has brought to me, and I will give it all back, all that I receive, 'cause nothing in this whole wide world belongs to me. I will give, 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 I will give it all back, all that I receive, 'cause nothing in this whole wide world belongs to me.
So last week I shared the story of the barge people. It's one of my favorite stories ever, and that story has been with me for over 50 years. I remember hearing it when I was in high school, like in 1970 or 71. And so just on a lark, I went to look for the book. And you know how it is today on the internet, you can find almost anything. And sure enough, here it was, Wonder and Worship by James Carroll. I was just so delighted to get this. So I started leafing through it, and I came across another story that I just think is so pertinent for today. And it's a story of these two dragonflies. So the story is these two dragonflies are sitting on a pond and they're having a conversation about the cosmos. And one of the dragonflies talks to the other one and he says, "Do you believe in heaven?" The other one goes, "Well, I think so." Then the conversation goes, "Have you ever seen heaven?" "No." "Shall we go look for it?" "Well, yes." And so they start their adventure. And first they fly above the pond and they look down. They don't see heaven, but they comment how beautiful and how lovely this pond is. Then they go up a little higher, up above the trees. Again, no heaven, but it's a beautiful sight. Then high up to the atmosphere, no heaven, but there's the earth looking so beautiful. And higher up to the moon, up and beyond, it's a fairy tale. And on they go in their quest for heaven. But they never seem to find it, no matter where they go. In fact, at one point, they don't even know what's up or down. But then, somehow or another, they begin to make their way back. And as they make their way back, they begin to notice this beautiful little place. And as they go closer and closer with this great silver pool and lush green, and finally they end up at the pond. And are they in heaven? Hell yes, they say. And so I just love this little story. But you know, it reminds me of another story, which is much older. It was written by Cicero in one of his books called The Republic. And in that, he talks about this deeply metaphysical story that has, well, in many ways, it's the first science fiction story that we know. It is the impetus for Dante's Divine Comedy. Arthur C. Clarke uses it a lot. Our modern science fiction all come from this really interesting story. It's called Scipio's Dream. And in this story, Scipio, who was a consul in the Roman Empire, is in Africa, and he's looking at his city of Carthage, and it's being devastated one thing or another. And so he's sort of losing hope. But he has this dream. And in this dream, his grandfather, who's also named Scipio, appears to him. And he takes him up above the city of Carthage, above the earth, into the great spheres of the cosmos. And he says, you know, look at what you're worried about. Look at what you're anxious about from this perspective. So you get this, right? I mean, when we change our perception on something, everything can change. When we look at our little things that we're dealing with, you know, that we're angry at our boss, or we're fighting with our partner, or we're wondering about one thing or the other, you know, when we're contained in it, it creates a level of frustration, fear, and anxiety. But you know, as Emerson says, it is only the finite that has wrought and suffered. The infinite lies stretched in smiling repose. So if we can expand it a little bit, something powerful and incredible can begin to happen. When we put it not in the context of the everyday, all the time, is this ever going to end? But when we begin to tell a new story of expansion and how, you know, when you think about something in relationship to eternity, whatever we're going through is literally just a blip. Rabbi Oliver Sacks says this: every act of perception is to some degree an act of creation, and every act of memory is to some degree an act of imagination. So let's sit with that for a second. Yes, every act of perception is an act of creation. Think about that, because what we're perceiving things to be is how we respond to them. In a real way, what we are perceiving is what we are becoming. And what we are becoming literally defines who we are. So there's this great book that I love. It's called The Art of Racing in the Rain. And there's a premise in it which is deeply metaphysical, which is this: where the eyes go, the car follows. And there's a lot of brain science to this. In fact, I remember when I used to ride motorcycles, one of the things that you really drive into yourself is that when you see an object on the road, don't focus in on it, because where your eyes are is where the motorcycle will go. And there are countless reports of people sort of running into a rock or running into a tree because their car may be swaying or swerving, and then they see a tree ahead of them and they're so focused on the tree, boom, off they go, right into the tree. But it's kind of like all the other things that happen in our life, right? The thing that we focus on is the thing that we're moving towards. And the thing that we're moving towards is literally who we are. We are what we are becoming. It is said that we are made in the image and likeness of the divine. And in the story of Exodus, Moses is getting ready to take this great adventure. And he says, by the way, I'm going to go see Pharaoh and I'm going to say that you sent me. Who are you? And God replies, Yahweh Asher Yahweh, which is the verb to be, present, future tense. So the very name of the divine written in the book of Exodus is, I am that I am becoming. And in a reality, we are what we are becoming. And so, don't we want to be becoming someone who is good? And the path to that really is, don't we want to be someone who is generous? And how we begin to expand generosity in our life is literally through the practice of gratefulness. Because there's something powerful that happens when we are grateful. When we are grateful, things begin to shift. Our perception changes. We're no longer feeling a sense of limitation. We're feeling a sense of expansion. In gratefulness, we're not feeling alone. We're feeling connected. Something truly happens. It really rescues us from the emotions that we may be feeling that may be limiting us. It begins to deliver us or offer us alternatives from the way that we believe in lack or experience that or perceive lack to a perception of abundance in every way. And so we naturally respond with a sense of generosity. We naturally respond by living an undefended life. In my own personal experience, what I have found is that the most prosperous people I have ever met have been the most generous people I have ever met. And their generosity grows out of a deep sense of gratefulness and living every day in the practice, not just the feeling of generosity. Parker Palmer says this: the heart's alchemy can turn suffering into community, conflict into the energy of creativity, and tension into an opening towards the common good. So, one of the things that I've offered this month for us to engage in as a spiritual practice is something known as the examen. It was developed by the 16th century mystic and founder of the Jesuits, Ignatius Loyola. And it's a 5-step form of prayer. It's a way for us to review the day. Many people do it at noon or, around midday as they look at the beginning of their day, and it gives them an opportunity to reboot. Or it's totally appropriate to do at night before we rest as a way of reviewing the day and then preparing for the next day. But what I'm going to offer today is that we do this practice thinking about those little dragonflies, or more metaphysically, thinking about Scipia's dream. So again, the practice is very simple. We simply begin by becoming aware of God's presence, of the divine beingness that pervades all things, that brings us to that sense of deep connection. And we just open ourselves to that wisdom as it allows us to review the day. And then we review the day, and we just become aware of what our emotions are. And we take one or maybe two items from the day and we take them to prayer. One is we focus on one that is growing, that we can continue to be grateful with. And the other is we focus on something that we may want to change. And then we take these things into an experience of prayer. And in doing so, we then begin to look forward to the coming day of how we can be just a little bit more generous, just a little bit more grateful. So let's do that now. Settle in. Allow yourself to just be present. And imagine that there's this opportunity just to sort of float above where you are. Just look down at yourself, sitting in your chair. Observe yourself. Just being aware that there is a divine presence that begins to lift us even farther, above the rooftop of our home, above the community where we live. We can look around and see, that there are millions of people going about doing one thing or another. We could just allow ourselves to observe as we lift higher and higher to the point where we see the planet Earth as this beautiful blue jewel suspended in space. And now, in this place deeply connected, almost as the divine itself, we just invite this wisdom, this perception, to look upon our day, to see how the things that we are grateful for are sustaining and expanding and continuing, to see the things that maybe we could have done better, really in this perspective, as tiny, almost insignificant. Something that with just a change in perception can change the whole reality. So we just allow this divine guidance to direct us on how we can correct these things. We feel what we're feeling, but we also know that whatever we're feeling, we can move to a sense of gratefulness. We can move to a sense of generosity, of expansion, of connection. And we just let that presence move us forward into the day, blessing it and giving thanks. And in closing, remembering the words of Albert Schweitzer, "The greatest thing is to give thanks for everything. He or she who has learned this knows what it means to live. They have penetrated into the whole mystery of life, giving thanks for everything." And so let's penetrate into the deep and great mystery of life. And so it is. Thank you.
We are wandering, not lost, forget about left or right. Caught myself somewhere between the bitterness and the light. Please help me see the lit inside of me. There are times when I find mother cultures in my mind, in a pool of sinking sand. Mother Nature takes my hand to help me see the light inside of me. down the stream. Oh, how life is but a dream. Soared by the billions, living free. No duality between you and me. Feel the energy and just let it be. I give myself to the world, let it out with the world. 'Cause I know we're all just singing along here together. I give myself to the world, let it out with the world. 'Cause in the end we're all just singing along here together. Give myself to the world, let it out with the world. 'Cause I know we're all just singing along here together. I give myself to the world, let it out with the world. 'Cause in the end we're all just singing along, all just singing along here together.
So thank you again for being part of our community. Whether you live in the virtual world with us or you attend our Sunday celebrations at the Hilltop Spiritual Center, you are important to us. We feel connected to you, and I'm trusting that you feel connected to us because you continue to watch us. You share with your friends. You make comments. We're interacting in one way or the other. And also your financial contributions are so essential, and they are so gratefully received because they allow us to be on location like we are today, to film, to produce, and also to do other things in the community itself. So thank you for that. And from the bottom of my heart and from all of us here at the Hilltop Spiritual Center, we wish you many, many, many blessings.